Hi, everyone. This is section 7.3, types of statements that we will come across in logic. So we are now going to look at various conditional statements. So remember, a conditional statement is if P, then Q. Okay, this is the one that we start with. If P, then Q. Now we have four types. So the conditional, if P then Q, the converse, which means you flip the P and the Q. So if Q then P, then we have the inverse. The inverse is going to be the opposite of the conditional, not P, then not Q. And then we call the last one the contrapositive, which is the negation of the converse. Now, this can get a little confusing. Now, what I would suggest that you do is learn the pattern. You have P then Q, then you flip it, Q then P. So then flip back, and now you have not P then not Q, and then flip that, not Q then not P. So once you understand the order of that, then you can start to attach the names of those. Now, when you look at the names of these conditional and converse, well, COND, CONV. So conditional comes before, the D comes before V. So conditional converse. Then you have inverse, and then the one that just has a long name, the contrapositive. Okay. And then in words, that's what those statements mean. So what I would do is make sure that you learn the name and the symbols in this order, because on the test, I am going to mix them up, which I did mix these up um, on throughout these examples. On some of them, uh, hang on, did I do that on some of these? I think there was only one that I did where uh, well, I don't know now. We'll see. Okay, some you're going to have to write the sentence in verbal, so in verbal form, write the sentence, and then others you're going to use the symbolic notation for this. Okay, so let's look at example one. So we say P is an animal, is a dog. Q, it is a mammal. Okay, so we're going to write the word statement for this. So let me just scoot this over. Okay, so the conditional, if P, then Q. So that means um, if an animal is a dog, then the animal, it, whoops, it being the animal, then the animal is a mammal. Okay, and that is a true statement. If the animal is a dog, then the animal is a mammal. Okay, so remember, a mammal is an animal that different characteristics, but basically gives live birth, has hair. Okay, and then we'll come back and talk about the logically equivalent in just a minute. Okay, now the converse. So the converse is when we're going to flip P and Q. So now we're going to say if an animal is a mammal, then the animal is a dog. So if an animal is a mammal, then the animal is a dog. Well, there are other types of animals that give live birth and have hair. So that's false. Cats, for example. Okay. Humans. All right. So that's false. Okay. Now we're going to look at the inverse. So the inverse is when you go back to the conditional, if P then Q. Now we're just going to negate both of those statements. So we're going to say if an animal, so I'm taking P, and I'm going to negate it. If an animal is not a dog, then, and then I'm going to negate Q, the animal is not a mammal. If the animal is not a dog, then the animal is not a mammal. Whoops. I didn't spell that right. Mammal. Okay. So if an animal is not a dog, so we can say a cat, then the cat is not a mammal. And that's false because the cat is a mammal. Okay. So that's a false statement. All right. Now the contrapositive is we take the converse, the Q then P, and we negate those. So that's going to read if an animal is not a mammal, then the animal is not a dog. If an animal is not a mammal, then the animal is not a dog. And that is true. Okay. If an animal is not a mammal, so let's say a snake, because it's cold-blooded. Okay. If an animal is not a mammal, so that's it would be a snake, then the animal is not a dog. Then the snake is not a dog, which is true. Okay. So now they want to know for the logically equivalent, we want to, now I said to circle, but because I've got this Word document here, I'm just going to highlight. So the statements that are true are the conditional and the contrapositive. So I'm just going to do those in bold. And then down here, the conditional and the contrapositive. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to ask this part of the question. And then the others would be the converse and the inverse. I'm not sure if I'm going to have you circle or just have you draw arrows to which ones are equivalent, or just have you write out which ones are equivalent, but we'll see. Okay, so the definition, two compound statements are logically equivalent if and only if they have the same truth values for all possible combinations of the simple statements that compose them. Notice, make sure that you note which statements are equivalent. Okay. All right. I want you to try number 2 on your own and let's see what you get. So I'm going to pause this in 3, 2. Now be careful before I pause it. Be careful because I have switched the order. So make sure that you are looking at the top for how these run. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pause it in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Let's see how you did. So if you learned it in order, which is what I would suggest that you do, then no matter what order these are given to you, you can always, let's see, you can always just work them out in order. So do the conditional first, if P then Q. So P is you own a Cadillac, Q is you own a car. So this is going to read, if you own a Cadillac, then you own a car. And that is true. Okay. So that was the conditional. Now next is the converse. So this is where we flip P and Q. So the conditional was if P then Q. Now we're going to do if Q then P. So this is going to read, if you own a car, then you own a Cadillac. Now the truth value to this, well, this is false. I own a car, but it's not a Cadillac. Okay, so that's false. Then the next one is the inverse. So this is when we flip back to P and Q, except we negate these. We negate P and we negate Q. If you do not own a Cadillac, then you do not own a car. If you do not own a Cadillac, then you do not own a car. Well, that's not true. If you don't own a Cadillac, if you own a Toyota, well, it could be, still could be, a car. So that's a false statement. Okay. And then the contrapositive, this is not, if not Q, then not P. So if you do not own a car, then you do not own a Cadillac. And that would be true. Okay. And then once again, go through and connect the ones that are true. So, or that are logically equivalent, excuse me. So the inverse and the converse are logically equivalent. And then I'm going to do that here. Okay. And then that leaves the conditional and the contrapositive to be logically equivalent. All right. Now, if you'll notice, going back to example 1, notice which statements were logically equivalent. So for example 1, the conditional and the contrapositive were equivalent, and the converse and the inverse were equivalent. The converse and the inverse are equivalent, and the conditional and the contrapositive are equivalent. That is not a fluke. That is always going to be true. Okay, so that's how you do all of these. Okay, so I don't think I need to go through the rest of this. I'm going to let you do this, and then you can look at the worked out answers on Blackboard to see if you got them right or wrong. Okay. All right. So that's all I've got for you. If you have any questions, let me know.